Hello, I am Zinfogel. In this video, we're going to discuss how to complete Regirock's June 2021 event missions with accessible sync pairs. You have to defeat the Regirock with 9 sync pairs or less, and your teams must include 3 Sinnoh, main character, and steel theme skills. We will do all missions in the same run. So let me level you for a second here. Regirock is by far the hardest legendary arena, and a fresh account will have extreme difficulties completing these missions. Regirock is quite dangerous. It attacks constantly with critical hits, so you want vigilance as a lucky skill. You also want to buff your defense to protect against its physical damage. Regirock can raise a shield for critical hit immunity, and it also attacks with very strong sure crit rock slides. You cannot debuff Regirock at all, though if you crit Regirock, you can drop its defense. Lastly, on Regirock's second health bar, it can become immune to every status and interference. My preferred method is using a strong core to weaken Regirock until it has very little health left, and then bring teams with the missing theme skills to finish it off. There are several viable steel-type gacha strikers you can use against Regirock, but I still recommend using Solgaleo because it has some important advantages. Solgaleo has innate impervious to prevent stat drops. Its grid also offers endurance and power reserves 5, which you can use to punish Regirock's sure crit rock slides. More importantly though, you have to bring vigilance. Units like Dawn, Jasmine, and even Phoebe have innate critical hit immunity and can tank Regirock. Potion users or vampire tanks with vigilance as a lucky skill can also handle Regirock with some defense support. Okay, before getting started, I want to cover the party a little bit. If you have Sycamore, bring him. But if you're watching this video, it's probably because you don't have Sycamore. So we got Skyla and Solgaleo, who are your tank and DPS respectively. That's a given, but the tier slot is Acerola, and she's certainly sticking out. The reason she's here is because she has a very powerful stun. With Aggravation 1 Astonish, she has a 60% chance of flinching, and Regirock is actually vulnerable to status ailments and interferences on its first health bar. Despite being highly resistant to flinch, you can constantly spam Astonish with Acerola and just keep Regirock in check, preventing damage and avoiding turns for your other party members so you can reach your sync a little bit quicker. That is so valuable that it merits a team slot. Now, I am choosing Acerola because she has the more accessible stun in the game. Her 1-5 grid has Aggravation 1, so anybody who recruits Acerola has access to this. But instead of Acerola, you could bring a Sleeper, for example. You can bring Ramos, Agatha, or Serena, or perhaps another flincher who also comprises more functions. For example, BP Morty or Leaf, who can flinch, but can also keep the party healthy with potions. So I just want to make it clear that Acerola is not the most optimal partner you can use, and you have to assess your options to see if you can bring somebody better who can make the battle easier. Now, there are some principles to flinching that are shared with Sleep Chains, and I don't want to bother you with the specifics, but what you want to do is use your flincher last on the turn sequence. And the whole point of flinching is buying turns for your other party members. So what you want to do is attack with Solgaleo, then with Skyla, and then with Acerola, so that in the scenario where Acerola successfully flinches, then you can attack more times with Solgaleo and with Skyla and reap the benefits, which is the whole point of flinching down Regirock. You want to stun Regirock to prevent damage and deal more damage to yourself, while stacking more sync buffs, which is going to help on the endgame. One final note about flinching or sleeping Regirock, since I am showing a direct example here, you want to delay your stun. Notice that with Acerola here, I am not queuing Astonish right away. I am kinda waiting for the ghost animation to pass by, just waiting for the damage numbers, and then queuing Astonish. And this just helps maintain a flinch lock where it's applicable, but you don't have to focus too hard on this, but if you remember this, it will probably help. That's the sketchiest part of the core. Then we have Skyla, and you know, she's a Skyla, she is amazing. She has defense and speed buffs as well as potion, so with some good potion multiple refresh luck, she can tank Regirock indefinitely. But Skyla has one problem, and that is a weakness, a literal one. Swanna is weak to rock. You know, against Regirock, a rock-type legendary, that is a bit of an issue. So if you plan to tank this encounter with Swanna, having Vigilance as a lock skill is borderline imperative. And I've done Regirock without Vigilance Skyla and I've suffered tremendously, so keep that in mind. If you cannot have the Vigilance Swanna, then you should consider some other gacha tanks like Dawn, Jasmine, Sinnoh Blue, Springborg, Leaf, somebody slightly more competent for the circumstances, but Skyla is viable. As you can see, she doesn't have too many issues tanking Regirock in spite of the rock type weakness. Now, I am using a fully gridded Skyla because I don't want to suffer, but a 1-5 Skyla can do this, it is possible. As long as you proc Potion NPR2 several times, she should get by, so don't get intimidated by the fact that Mines is running a full grid. It just gives her better potion consistency, as well as the opportunity to flinch with Ghost staggering one, but ultimately it's not needed per se. Oh, by the way, notice here on the second health bar that I just stop attacking with Acerola often. It's because Regirock again unflappable and it's immune to flinches. So past the first health bar, Acerola's utility just plummets. Lastly, we have Solgaleo, who is doing most of the heavy lifting, and this is a free-to-play legendary sync pair, so that means that you can get the free 5-5 2020, and its event is currently running, so you should get Solgaleo and also invest on it, because it will probably help you on Champion Stadium and whatnot. But for the purposes of this fight, you really want the Solgaleo's grid utility, because you get Super Duper Effective 2 for a free multiplier when you deal super effective damage, and you also have a Focus Rush 1, which raises Solgaleo's critical hit rate when it uses a sync move, and on a really low encounter like this one, it's very viable. It also has a sync freebie to spare you from consuming gauges after using a sync move, though you can drop this and go for Sunsteel Strike move gauge refresh, or perhaps Sharp Entry 1 just to give you a more offensive encounter. But I am also going for its Power Reserves utility, and going for Endurance and Power Reserves 5. And the reason is that Regirock is very likely to push you into Power Reserves range because of its Sure Crit Rock Slides. So I want to show you an attempt in a little bit that took advantage of that, but if you maintain Solgaleo in critical health with this multiplier, it just deals crazy damage and greatly accelerates the pace of the battle, so you should take advantage of it where possible. Anyway, we are almost done with this attempt. With some reasonable potion and a flinch lock, you should be able to push Regirock into critical HP. So here you just measure Regirock's health with Metal Claw and just put it on a range where the next teams can finish it off. But if you feel alright about the range, then don't push your luck. It's better to be safe than sorry. Okay, here is the attempt I wanted to show you. In this attempt, I reached Regirock's second health bar, and Acerola failed to flinch Regirock's Sure Crit Rock Slide. So I couldn't skip this opening attack, and the whole party gets mauled by it. Acerola goes down, it looks like a disaster, but if this happens, don't panic, because Regirock also activated Power Reserves 5. So Solgaleo can start doing some really good damage, and this vastly accelerates your offense. The whole point of having a really slow first health bar was to stack sync buffs, so that in case this happens, you get some really strong damage, and you can still get to the end of the fight just fine. So this is the whole reason I gridded Solgaleo the way I did, just to give you a backup for this scenario. Alright, now we're going to complete the event missions with some sacrificial teams. Here I have Barry to complete a Sinnoh team skill, as well as Kalem and Torchic for main character team skills. All of these are story characters, and you can recruit Torchic right after Kalem. Now, this team probably won't be able to do much, but I specifically brought Torchic alongside Barry, because Torchic can quickly buff a special attack, and Barry can maybe do a little bit of cheap damage in case you need it. And for a final team, you want to bring some Steel-type striker with some closing power to wrap things up. But this can be a little tricky depending on who you brought on the previous teams. Let's say that you use Steven instead of Solgaleo, then you're going to be missing a main character team skill, so you have to bring Solgaleo for a final team anyway, which is why that guy is so good for these event missions in particular. But in my case, I had to bring a couple Sinnoh theme skills as well as a couple Steel-type theme skills. And Thornton is great for some theme skill compression because he has Sinnoh and Steel-type theme skills, so if you're struggling, then you should look out for that guy. But well, that should be it for Regirock. I am not going to sugarcoat the things, this battle is really difficult and it will take some grinding and some RNG to get through, especially if you are playing with minimal resources, but I think that Solgaleo is a crux for any free-to-play setup, so with some effort I think it's plausible. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. If somebody doesn't answer it, then I will make sure to get to it, but yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you another time.